Thank you all for being here. Really excited that you have joined us tonight. Really excited to have Ryan here tonight with us to talk about raising money for your social impact venture. I know this is a pretty important topic and something that has obvious interest since we've got such a large group out tonight. So thanks for being here. I wanted to just start by, if I can get the slides to move forward. I wanted to start by doing a land acknowledgement. I wanted to acknowledge that this land on which we operate on at Edge has been for thousands of years the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations. Today, this area is still the home to many Indigenous people, and we're grateful for this area and the community that we have here. And as we feel that gratitude, we also grapple with it a little. We're mindful of the broken covenant and the need to reconcile with the people who were here first. And we affirm it's our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We're grateful for the opportunity to be working and living on this land. So I know many of the names that have come up on the screen here today, and so you're probably already somewhat familiar with Edge, but I wanted to just walk you briefly through what we do. We offer mentorship, learning programs, co-working space, and we provide access to some funding opportunities for entrepreneurs and startup ventures within Sheridan and within the Edge community, which often ends up coming from outside of Sheridan. We provide inclusive support to impact entrepreneurs. So our focus is on supporting people who are making an impact through their venture. And we connect you to resources within Sheridan College. We also work to strengthen the regional innovation region and support you in that way as well. We've had, since our launch a few years ago, we've had over 300 founders launch ventures within our space. We've had 653 jobs created. Our ventures have raised $8.4 million through either sales or through investment capital. 73% of our ventures are social enterprises, and 80% of our ventures are led by unrepresented founders. So we're a pretty diverse group, and we are all pretty heart-driven people. I'm really excited to have Ryan with us tonight, and Ryan has been a big supporter of Edge from the very beginning. And he's had all the years that I've known him. I first met Ryan, gosh, it'd probably be 15 years ago, I think, right, Ryan? When I was out doing the speaking circuit a lot, and
with the QuickBooks sponsored the Startup Peel
right
event at Rose.
Yeah,
I believe you're the speaker, right? Yeah.
Was I any good? So Ryan's got a real community-driven heart, and every time I meet him, I'm impressed by his passion and energy, his drive. But he's a serial social entrepreneur who has been working on a few different missions. He's pretty committed to, at least the way he described it to me at one point, was that he wanted to increase the amount of successful social enterprises in the community and help them amplify their impact with access to funding. So I think this topic is very near and dear to his heart. He launched the first Black youth entrepreneurship incubator to empower them to create their own opportunities and become leaders in the community. That's called Innovation, I believe. And then he launched, sorry, I got you. He launched
website, Innovation.
Sorry, what is it? Innovation, right?
Yeah.
And then he also launched Detailing Nights, which was your original venture, right?
Right, yeah. That was before the youth program.
Yeah, I was working backwards.
Yeah, it's all it all
Sorry
connects.
about that.
It all connects.
So, I think you're going to really enjoy this session with Ryan tonight. He's a good guy, and I'm excited to hear the latest on what he's working on, and then talk about some of the fundraising initiatives. So, Ryan, let's just jump in. I want to hear a little bit about your entrepreneurial story. Let's start there. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're chatting about a boring background, if everyone in the chat can put in the name of their company and how much money they want to raise, like what amount of capital would help you execute this vision that is in your head. So, like I was saying to Lisa, my entrepreneurship journey, I would say, officially started while I was at Sheridan. So, represent Bruins. 2009, I remember I was laid off 2 weeks before my wedding, and I thought I had this cushy job. They were sending me on trips for business development, and then boom, got laid off. So I took that as the, I guess, the wake up call to say, you know what my dad had been planting in my head about, if you want to control your destiny, you should start your own job. If you want to be rich, you have to own your own business. So I took that and I said, you know what? I had been drifting through college. I started Sheridan in 2001. And then when I decided to start the business, the Detailing Nights in 2009, that's when I feel the importance of college and post-secondary education clicked in, because I was doing my accounting diploma. And I was like, you know what? I need to learn about what I'm being taught in order to apply it to my business. So from there, it was like, boom, so much easier to graduate, even though a lot of the courses, especially auditing and taxation, would have normally put me to sleep. Because I was able to apply it directly to my business, it made so much more sense. So in my journey with Detailing Nights, so for those that don't know, it's a mobile waterless car cleaning service. So we go to people's houses or their offices, clean their cars on the spot without using water, and our eco-friendly plant-based cleaning supplies. And what I'm most proud of with the company is our youth entrepreneurship program. So I'll say it started about 2013. I had actually done a college pro painters franchise at the same time as going to school at Sheridan. And I took that concept to say, you know what, we could use car cleaning and the business that we built, apply the college pro painters framework, and be able to help more youth in the community, because cleaning cars, I felt, was a lot easier than painting houses. So we were able to work with high school students, and even those that aren't in school or have come out of detention have gone through our program. So all that to say, along the journey, I've raised different types of funding for the venture. And I feel like I was at the beginning of this concept of social enterprise, like it actually getting a label and becoming, I want to say popular, but becoming known. So those might remember the Mars Discovery District downtown. They started their first social enterprise cohort called Impact 8. So I was part of the first cohort of their social enterprise section, and they were housing the B Corp certification. So we can go deeper into that after. And as I go through the different types of funding we got. So now fast forward to about 4 years ago, we were able to start the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, because when I was looking to grow my company, there weren't a lot of Black-focused business organizations to go to say, hey, I'm ready to franchise. I want to expand across Canada. My vision is to actually have Detailing Nights in every country around the world where there are cars and unemployed youth. So there wasn't anyone really to go to with that vision. So we built it ourselves. And now I'm able to take all of the different types of funding I was able to get in the business and create those resources to be able to share with everybody in the community. So I'll pause there before I go deeper into, because I did want to see what types of amounts people are looking for. I'm seeing $20. Oh, they corrected it to 20K.
Corrected it.
Oh,
I
you
thought
need
I could offer her.
$20.
I could
Meet me at the
spot her. It
office.
was
I'll hook you up with $20. Who else did I see? 450 and OV. Okay. At 150 I see there. And it's important to know, because at the different levels of capital you're trying to raise, I find that you fit into different types of buckets. So if you're only raising, let's say between zero, well, not zero, but let's say $500 to 25,000, you kind of fit in that micro loan compartment, or again, pre-seed. Pre-seed is like family and friends, or very low investing angel investors. But then when you get into that 25,000 to 250,000, Now you're getting more into traditional loans, and also I would say again pre-seed investment, angel investors, or a really well-off family if you can convince them. And then once you get over 250,000, you're talking to more like expansion loans, and then like seed capital and venture capital. So yeah, felt like that can
I
give us
want
some
to,
context.
yeah, I want to clarify that though. Sometimes I think people think that money is like grants. Is that what we're
Ah,
talking about here tonight? Or talk to me about the different types
yeah,
of
and we
access to
definitely
money.
gotten grants too. So grants are, I would say, a different animal, because when you're looking at grants, you're typically fitting into what the funder wants you to accomplish. When you're going for capital like loans or investment, you're controlling the narrative to say like you are going to execute X with your money and it's going to create a return. So grants I always see as bonus money. If you are
Mm,
not already operating a business that can generate sales and be somewhat sustainable, going after a grant really won't help your business. One, because you'll be out of business by the time you get the grant. So you definitely have to have the business
true.
moving to be able to wait for a grant to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, a lot of times I feel like people, and we'll open this up for questions in a minute, but I sometimes feel like people come and, want to know right away, how do we go out and get grants? And really many times, and even financing, but many times they really just need to go out and sell something, right? Depending on the business they're in. So,
Absolutely. And I've seen where there are newer grants that I would say you could use it to start developing the concept. The investment readiness program is a great example where even ACBN, the Afro Caribbean Business Network, used two grants. So we got one grant from the Toronto Enterprise Fund to do our feasibility study and our business plan. And then we got another grant from the investment readiness program to really launch the business. So we technically use grants to formulate the idea and launch it. But again, that just was created in 2018. And again, it took them, oh my gosh, a year and a half to open the applications, and then another half a year to start dispersing funds. Round two is open. That was supposed to be open in July, and now still hasn't reopened yet. So if you're sitting back, like you're saying, waiting on grants, really, it's
you
gonna
get
be
a
a
lot of
long.
revenue in the meantime.
Yeah, you need a hobby in between getting the
Yeah.
next. So
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
Funny. So if I'm to understand you correctly, and based on my own knowledge and what I'm learning from you, it seems like there's a few different buckets that you could put money into. There's sort of grant funding, which we'd all love, but it's bonus money. And there's sort of revenue, which is let's go sell something, but not every business can do that right away. And then there's the financing, and then there's investment capital. Are we missing anything?
There's more like creative ones, but I'm not versed in like raising bonds and
Oh,
uh,
yes. Yeah.
like convertible debt, that type of investments. I'm
Muni
more like the
bonds and
ones
that
that
kind of thing.
I've
Yeah.
raised for myself have been grants and then microloans and investment, even though it was initially family and friends and then a
Hmm.
pre-seed round for our company. And one thing that I was writing down as you were talking is that if you if you need to raise the money in order to operate, you need to raise it all. So that's where investment type capital comes in, because you have to be able to pitch this idea in order to get all the operating capital you need and like development costs, like bringing on, if it's a software developers, you need to be able to have that runway to get to sustainability, or at least get to your next round. So a lot of times with software companies, the CEO is really the chief equity giver, officer, money raiser person. You are like full time raising the money. You've already got the idea and the machine is operating, and you have to keep the fuel coming through. And a lot of people can't handle being like the chief money raiser. Like
Yeah.
that becomes
The
your new
pressure
job.
of that.
Exactly. And if you don't raise the money, the company typically goes downhill or closes completely.
Hmm. In some ways, in my experience, in some ways, it's easier to just go sell, just be the
Well,
sales guy rather than the
that's
money
where we
maker.
push too. Yeah. Because if
Yeah.
you're able to operate and make sales, and then that's sustainable, now the capital you bring in amplifies the machine. And you don't need the capital to like survive. It just becomes, okay, we want to do X, Y, Z. So let's go get the money to inject and amplify. And you'll notice when we do seminars especially in the Black community, there's a very, I don't want to call it a disdain, but there's a standoffness to loans and taking on debt. But when I talk to friends in other communities, they have no fear of bringing on debt. And I had to keep asking, like, why is it that you'll just go to a bank and like ask for 50,000, 250,000 and not have any fear? And I'll talk to my cousin and we're like, I don't even want to take $5,000. But what I've noticed is because we have to be educated into how to leverage capital. So if you're going for $5,000 debt, my cousin is getting it because he needs to pay off his other bills and then he'll just figure it out. When they're going for 50,000, that 50,000 is going to amplify their sales, that the revenue they're making pays off the debt load. And the debt load is a small percentage monthly. So now that that's covered because you increase your sales, you go get more money and then you're paying off the debt load. So that shift in mindset was big for me. And now that's what we're teaching is like, you have to have a plan for the money. If you're bringing on money, you have to be able to show to yourself how it's going to help you generate more sales so that that increase in income now covers what you have to pay back for the loan.
Is that not really why they say ask for money when you don't need it? Because in a way, if you're in a position where you're stopping Niagara Falls with the loan, you know,
Right.
you're not in a position to be able to grow your business. You're just putting a toothpick in front of a problem, right?
Yes. And a lot of times it usually doesn't even get you back to like, I don't want to say break even, but like you said, you have all this debt that might have piled up or bills are piling up. So you're like, okay, I just need money to be able to get back to even. And so now you're at even, now you have additional loans to pay back and the business has proven itself that it can make the money you need to survive. So you really brought on money, like you said, into a machine that's broken. So you might have patched here and there, but really you haven't proven that your company is viable. And I remember the first, I would say 4 years of Detail Ignites, it was like that. I hadn't proven the model. I was out there, hustling, going door to door and making a certain amount. But when we started having staff, I didn't properly calculate the cost of payroll. So every week we were actually going backwards. And then you start asking yourself, how are we paying the bills? Why is the bank account not where?
How come we never have any cash in the bank?
Like, oh, okay, we'll go get money and then we'll get a loan and it kind of patches it. But then the next 2 years, you're right back into the same place because the actual company structure wasn't proper. So, I mean, we've gone through ups and bad downs, and then you humble yourself and you realize, okay, we need to restructure this properly. Then you learn from those mistakes. So, and I just saw in the comment too that somebody, Junior, is also afraid of debt and loves grants.
Love it. Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
So can I just, before we open it up to questions, because we've got 30 people on the call, I'm sure there's a lot of different questions.
Cool.
I'm going to do two things. First, I want to make a plug for the RISE program at Edge, because in the RISE program, we're all about getting you to revenue. So we'll help you access funding and financing if you need to. But we are going to push you hard on the revenue side in that program. So I know we've got a number of people on the call who have either applied to that program or are in the program or are just finishing or just in LEAP and looking to maybe eventually be in RISE. That's what we're all about there. We're about getting you to revenue because of the very things that you're talking about, right? And then we help you figure out how much funding you need, and then we help you go and find it. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to, and this is really a question for you, if you think about within Edge, there are sort of three groupings of types of ventures. So we're all impact focused ventures, but we kind of group into three categories. The first is pure social enterprise, right? Aligning your business around, maybe one or more of the SDGs, the UN SDGs, or some other impact measurement tool. There's purpose-led companies, which are really more trying to balance the bottom line. And then there's not-for-profits, enterprising not-for-profits. So if you think about those three groups, perhaps different financing available, correct?
Yeah, well, because for me, I guess it's two groups. It's one,
Okay.
you're for profit, you're starting on the for profit side, and you're
Mm-hmm.
moving towards social responsibility, like community impact. And then the other side, you're starting more like the nonprofit, you're doing all this work for free, I would say, and then you
Mm-hmm.
start to think of income generating activities. So
Right.
whether you're purpose led or social enterprise, you realize that you have to generate revenue in order to do the work that you want to do in the community. On the nonprofit side, like Junior was saying, you're focused more on grants and fundraising, and then you might start thinking about income generating activities. So definitely the types of funding differ, because when you're on the nonprofit side, you're looking at grants, fundraising, maybe memberships you're doing with your organization, and then actually having a service or a product to sell. And for traditional nonprofits, it's a hard sell. Like if you're sitting in front of a board of an established nonprofit and trying to get them to talk about generating income and selling things, it's usually a hard sell. But for the purpose driven and the social enterprise, they already have something to sell, but they also have a heart where they want to do positive things in the community. So they could actually go after, I think they're more comfortable going after loans. Of course, now they're opened up to more grants. But again, looking at investment, they typically don't look at investment because impact investing, again, is new. And I feel like it hasn't been executed very well. There's different platforms that now talk about impact investing, but it hasn't become the mainstream where, let's say, a pension fund is looking at an impact investment that is going to be a purpose-led organization that's an edge. Like, how do we get them to start seeing that as a viable business in order for them to move some dollars over there? But I haven't seen that yet. So it's more debt and like microloans on the social enterprise side and the newer grants that are available now.
Love it. So I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Just if you're going to ask a question, maybe just turn your camera on if you don't mind, just so that we can talk to you, the person, rather than you, the wall. And if you just want to type your question in the chat, that's okay too.
Cool.
Otherwise, we'll just keep chatting. I guarantee we can. Enough. You're here. You're building a pretty aggressive venture from the sounds of things. I've been looking at your plans. Do you want to talk about anything that I know you're trying to raise a big number, if I recall. I saw it in the chat here. Do you have a question for Ryan?
I haven't thought about anything right now, but
Okay.
yeah. So basically, what we're trying to do is fast track UN SDGs as a whole. Coming to my background, I worked or volunteered as CIBC's environmental co-lead at CIBC. So yeah, I have some background and experience on reporting, sustainability audits, etc., etc.
So what kind of capital are you more comfortable with? Like loans, investment? I know grants are there, but are you looking to give up equity in what you're building, or are you just looking for the capital you need to operate?
If I want to give up equity, I really want to know, like, to whom I'm giving my equity to. Like, if the organization or the company has the same vision as me, so even for me to hire someone for my company, I'm really looking at that, particular point, vision. If the person has the same vision as me like save our planet, or if he is for the same vision, then for sure I'm ready to give equity. But if not, not so sure how comfortable I am. So yeah.
Gotcha. So how's it being funded now? Like, is it all self-funded? Like,
Yeah,
to this?
currently it's all self-funded. I resigned from CIBC a few months ago in October,
Gotcha. Yes.
and yeah, so yeah, and eventually I was like, this that wasn't. I was working as a data analyst as my day job, but
Gotcha.
I thought I should really do something, meaningful. So this is something I wanted to do. So yeah.
Yeah, you should keep an eye out because CIBC has a new fund that they're launching. I believe it's in February, where
Okay.
if you don't qualify for the loan portion of it, you get a grant portion instead in order to prepare you for the loan portion. So definitely keep your eye out for that one that they're launching in February.
What's the name of that? Sorry.
They have, it's no name. I haven't heard the name. So they're one of our sponsors, and
Okay.
so they always tell me about products that are coming out. So it's in beta testing right now. So technically, I'm not supposed to be telling anybody, but yeah, it should be launching first week of February. So keep an eye out for that one.
Hush, 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 hush. It's a
Sure.
Yeah.
confidential secret with 30 people in the room here.
Listen, I have a talk show. I can't be confidential, and they know this. Like, listen, if you tell me
Well, that's
something,
probably why they're planting it, right?
right? Exactly.
Okay, so Ryan, on that question though, or on that point, the whole thing around equity that you mentioned a minute ago, how do you know how much, if any, or when to give up equity?
When to give up equity is interesting. And there's a colleague that I work with, his name is Marlon Steven. So he runs Square Circle Ventures. He's probably a better person to ask about how to divvy up the company. But when we were doing it for Detailing Nights, we went through a phase where it's only 10%. Like, no matter what we felt like the company was at that time, we were only willing to give up 10%. But then when I first initially went to friends and family, they didn't accept 10%. Like, it got more than that. So then after that experience, going to, I would say, an angel investor and getting more of his guidance to say, like, listen, this is what I'm thinking. He was saying, if you really want to get people on board, it's around 30 to 33% because they want to have that say. If people are offering to take half your company, stay away from that. But that, I would say 20 to 33% is a good number if you're getting all the money you need to operate. If a person is just adding on for you to be able to expand the concept, 15% or less, like, they'd have to really either, again, be funding all you need to expand or be able to bring a lot of expertise and money to get more than 10%. But when we get into like employee stocks and bring on co-founders and giving that equity, that's a whole deeper conversation. But do not use Dragon's Den as a thumb test or a model in order to how to evaluate your company. Definitely talk with people that do investing.
For sure. So you've given up some equity now
So that's where, so we've been through a phase where we gave up equity and we mistakenly almost became a public company, because if you give up, if you have 50 shareholders, you automatically are deemed a public company. So you have to do your audit. You're pretty much treated like a public company. So we had 41 family members invest in that first round. So that's where I learned from my accountant, don't, like, stop what you're doing and let's create a new strategy. And so that kind of ran its course, and they created another company that is the international division of Detailing Nights. So that one, I only gave up 10% in order to get the money we needed to expand. So it went from, trial and error, bad idea, mistake, to more structured. And now when we're raising more money, we have a lot more equity. And that's, again, what happened. So the family and friends round took up, I think, 49% of the company, because I did not know what I was doing. So when I went to the next angel investor, he was like, there's no room to invest in this company without you losing control. And now I have to deal with 49 or 41 people that have a say and can steal that. And he didn't want that headache. So it took a lot of coaxing and restructuring and then being able to do it properly. So, Yeah, trial and error. If you can skip that, again, use the resources that Edge has. I know they have a great connection with MNP. MNP, talk with them about what you're doing with your company. They can definitely steer you in the right direction with how to carve it up equity-wise.
Love it. So glad you mentioned that. That's one of the reasons we do Mentor Monday, is to put entrepreneurs in the room, not just the experts. You know, not that I think you're, if anything, perhaps as much of an expert because you've sort of been through a lot of different things, but you need to surround yourself with people who have walked in your shoes and have their practical knowledge.
Yes, yes, so true.
So how do you find those forward thinking
Mhm.
investors or foundations or foundations or grant giving organizations that would support social enterprises?
Yeah, I feel like we're slowly building that database. The experience that we had with the investment readiness program, and actually, let me back up before the IRP even came out and the social finance fund. I'll get to that. So, Mars Discovery District, as I was talking about, had their social enterprise new division. Before, they were only focused on like tech companies, and then they had Impact 8, and they created the SVX. So SVX, I believe, is the social venture exchange. And on that platform, they are supposed to be connecting impact investors with social enterprises. Again, the track record of it, I feel like, is still like techie, green tech focused, but they are supposed to be expanding it. So that would be a great place to start. Mars has a lot of expertise. They used to do the impact investing summit every single year. So that's a great place to start to say, okay, where are people that care about the planet, that want to invest in social enterprises, where to find them? Now, the federal government created the Social Finance Fund. So they want to see, like I was doing with the Spectrum, more nonprofits start to think about revenue generating activities, and more for-profits start to think about impacting their community in a positive way. So in this middle is the that's where the social enterprise lives. So they want to invest more money into those types of businesses. One, because those nonprofits are self-sustaining, so they're not always coming back for grants. And two, the for-profit companies are not fully capitalistic and just at all costs trying to maximize shareholder value. So all that to say, they created a pot of $800 million for this social finance fund. And within it, it was going to be investments into social enterprise, but they realized a lot of nonprofits or social enterprises weren't ready to take on investment. So they created the investment readiness program. $50 million was carved out to help people that are running social enterprises to get investment ready. So that had 2 cycles. It ended, and now they opened up round 2. I think it's $50 more million. So that's it. Because I was like in the ecosystem building of the investment readiness program, we start to map who is in this space. And there's a great spreadsheet slide, or there's a great slide that I'll share with you, Lisa, that shows all the ecosystem partners, the expert service providers, and Sheridan's on there, and ecosystem mobility. So there's intermediaries, mobility partners, and expert service providers. So that spreadsheet is like 40 organizations. That is a great place to start. And then with our spreadsheet that I created is just a funding spreadsheet that says, hey, any type of funding that I can find anywhere, we put into this spreadsheet. And if something matches, go for it. If there's anything that you qualify for, make sure and get an application in. Don't let this money pass you. And I always say we have to position ourselves in front of the flow of money. So we have 800 million flowing out over the next 2 years. If you're standing over here and the money is here, figure out how to get in front of it.
You might want to align yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they need to get this money out. And a lot of times, because we're not versed in how to write grants or do applications for these types of funding, we just kind of throw up our hands and dismiss it. So definitely, I've seen a lot of people on this call that want to access grants start to look at government websites that talk about grants. The federal government has one, Ontario government has one. Municipal is less, but I would definitely still be plugged in, because what I found is if you get a municipal grant, it helps you get provincial grants and federal grants, because you can say like, hey, even though it was a $5,000 project, you still showed the ability to take in money, use it or steward it properly, and then complete a project. So the province and the feds are like, oh, okay, the city of Brampton trusted you with money, we'll now trust you. So there's a stepping stone that you can use smaller grants to get the bigger ones. And even with the Ontario Trillium Foundation, they just opened up their applications. I would say they're one of the more difficult grants to get, but it might take you 2 or 3 tries. But on that third try, you're getting like 250,000. So is it worth your time to make the attempt, knowing that it might not be successful? But again, hey, I've seen first-time applicants get funded. It's not probable, but you typically don't get the second attempt if you don't take the first attempt. So yes, put in that first application as best you can, work with a grant writer, get them to review it. Is it Brittany, I think, is at Sheridan? Or am I getting her name wrong?
Yeah, you're right. It's Brittany.
Yeah, take her, like she was doing webinars, especially with the investment readiness program. Get her to review it. She was so gracious with her time to say like, hey, if you've written a grant for this thing, send it in. I'll review it for you. You're getting a professional grant writer to now really fine tune what you put in. Then if it comes back and you got declined, you can now go to them and say, okay, tell me why. What happened? What can I improve? And they'll break it down, and you take all that knowledge, put it into your second application, and now they're pretty much judging their own words. That's how I got the first grant, where the first time that I applied, they told me no, and they told me every single reason why. That second application had all the answers, that they said, like fix this, fix that. It's all fixed. So if you decline me now I have to sit back and be like, well, you told me what was wrong. I fixed it. What's wrong now? So that's where you really have to use the no's in your favor. If you can learn from them, it turns into yeses very quickly.
It also seems to me that it's such an onerous process to make the application in some cases. So you got to go through it once, because once you've done it, then it's easier to just update the information with your latest.
Absolutely. And I call it like your grand blueprint. So once you've completed, especially if you complete one of the more difficult ones, you have a blueprint that you can use for 90% of the other grants. So at any given time, I would say we have 20 grant applications on the go that are like being reviewed, because from that one blueprint that I created because of our successful application in 2016, we now use that same template. A lot of the research, of course, you update the research, but all the language and the formatting, you have it all. So now you just are on, I call it like grant hunting. You just hunt for anything that matches what you've already done. And now you're 90% completed. You just kind of, fine tune it for what that specific grant is looking for.
So Ryan, there's a few questions here. One is, sorry, I think I'm saying that wrong. I apologize. He asked, overall, for social ventures at seed stage, how many funding or grants are we looking at in number in Canada? Do we have any idea? Kind of that nebulous thing. Every time we think we have a handle on it, there's another one that pops up.
Well, that's where I would say the SVX is for a social enterprise looking for investment dollars. That's the best platform that I know of, other than crowdfunding, which would be like a Front Founder or Ecovesto. When you're looking for grants, again, social enterprise is Toronto Enterprise Fund and the Investment Readiness Program. So those two, it's called something else with the Canadian Women's Foundation, but it's part of the same ecosystem. So those are the two best ones that I've seen. And also the McConnell Foundation has something called InnoWeave. So InnoWeave helps with getting out funding to social enterprises as well, more to help them hire consultants to be able to like help them with their feasibility study or their business plan. But again, InnoWeave is very, they lean towards more established nonprofits. So if you're more of a startup social enterprise, especially coming from the for-profit side, I haven't seen a lot of supports other than Investment Readiness Program and Toronto Enterprise Fund would be the two best ones.
Then May was asking, are they currently accepting applications? I think she was referring to the $800 million fund.
Right. So that's where they were supposed to open round 2 in July of 2021. So every month since July, I've been like, well, it was supposed to open before, it should open this month. And then the next month is like the same thing. So I'm weary of saying it should have opened in January. Hey, it should open in February. But if it doesn't open this quarter, something's, I would say, fatally flawed. But I'll give it to the end of March. By March, I can put my words behind it should open by March because they're way overdue. So look out for that one. And I think the Toronto Enterprise Fund should be taking in applications because they're finishing their last cohort this week. So their next round should be starting shortly as well.
Mm-hmm. So, May, did you get the answer to what you wanted? The grant's name?
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Jr. saying, shouldn't there at least be a ceiling that we give ourselves as entrepreneurs, like almost like a guide that we help each other figure it out? Because let's be honest, if we give away too much too early, that could really come back to bite us, right?
Right. And that's where you really have to analyze what are you getting for that 33%. Even if it's 10%, 15%, again, it could be half your company and that person is the best partner ever that you could have asked for. So if you're giving up, let's say 20%, is that person going to help you get to your next round? Because once you start playing in the equity game, it's really a path towards, I'll say, IPO. So along that path, you'd have to say, okay, at pre-seed, we're going to give up X. At our seed round, we're going to give up Y. At our Series A, we're going to give up X. At our Series B, all the way down to IPO. If you're not thinking of going public, then you really have to dig deep and say, what do I want to come out of this company? Do I want to sell it at some point? Because then equity doesn't really mean anything to you if you're just going to keep it forever. It's really just a means to get capital. So if you're going to keep it and just run it and, hey, pass it down to your children, then really you should bring in dollars that you need to be able to operate optimal.
Let's be clear, there's no judgment in any of that though, right? If you just
Absolutely.
want to build a legacy business for your family, that's a good thing too. But the question about whether you want to go public really relates to if you're bringing investors in, how do they monetize, right? How do they...
Their investment, exactly. Because now they're seeing your company in a different perspective than you're seeing your company. They're saying, I'm putting money into this vehicle in order to get a return eventually. What does that return look like? When you get into the VC space, that return becomes very aggressive. The only way to possibly get the returns they're looking for could be to go public, or at least a couple of rounds later. So if you're just looking at kind of angel investment, again, if they're looking for 5-10 multiple, they're going to be looking for some sort of exit, or at least to be able to sell their shares at a later round. So them being able to sell their shares at a later round means they're selling it to somebody that also wants to exit down the road. What does that exit look like? Now you have people around you talking about IPO and Series E, and you, when you first started, that wasn't even in your realm of possibility.
Yeah.
You're just like, I just want to build an amazing company. And now I got people talking to me about when are we going to go on the stock exchange? It's like, so if you don't map it out for yourself, you won't know where to nip it in the bud. If a person that's an angel investor starts talking about exiting, you have to know for yourself, what does that mean? Does that just mean, hey, maybe they're selling their shares back to you because the company's gotten to a point where it's big enough that you don't have to get another investment round. You just, hey, give that person a great return and they're happy, you're happy, and nobody's talking about the stock exchange and making you nervous. So always know they call it like starting with the end in mind. Work backwards to what you believe you want to get to.
And it's a whole spectrum. Like it's not just go
Yes.
IPO or build a legacy business for yourself and your family. There's a whole lot of pieces
Right.
or opportunities in between that, right? There's, you could sell privately, you could sell to a partner, you could, go and sell the system or product that you're building and sell it into like a big corporate company and, find
Right.
a great exit
And
that way and collect
yeah,
your
I remember you
residuals
sold,
over time.
because you sold one of your companies, right?
I
So
did.
what was that thought process like deciding
Um,
when to sell?
I didn't build with the end in mind. I had no clue what I was doing in my first
Yeah,
company. I uh, I built that company, and I will tell you, the ecosystem didn't exist to the same level back then that it does today.
right.
So, I mean, and even when you started, the ecosystem wasn't as strong as it is today.
Yes.
So people were just sort of fumbling around, figuring it out, and unless you were building a tech company, you didn't have the same access to opportunities and
Right.
investment
So true.
opportunities. Devin, I'll let you talk for a second.
Yeah, no worries. And I did see Chucky, what was his name? That got funded through Trillium as a first timer. Ah, nice. Yeah, my first time was not excellent. And so Junior saying, if I'm not planning on selling, equity might not be the right route for me. And that's where it could work for you if the person that you're giving equity to understands you do not see yourself selling the company at any point. That's where how they get their money back would have to change. Perhaps it becomes debt instead. They're willing to work with you. You're going to take a certain amount of money from them and promise them X return. And again, usually equity would get you multiples return. Debt typically gets you percentages return. So they'll say, okay, we'll do the debt. It could be even a bond where after 10 years, they're getting X percentage along the way. And then you pay out the bond at the end and you guys are both happy. So there's so many different vehicles. And that's where, again, put leverage MNP, leverage these multi-billion dollar entities that Edge and Sheridan have created partnerships with, because they can map it out for you. They can say, like, listen, if you need X amount and you, at the end you don't want to sell, these are your options. And then you can now pick and be in a position of confidence to say, hey, the meetings that I have, this is what I want. Like a lot of times entrepreneurs go into meetings and they're asking the investor what the investor wants from them. And so the investor has all the leverage. The investor has all the money, and the investor is dictating what you're going to do with their company. And I know this because I was there. I was in these pitch rooms, and I'm just like, this is what we're doing. I know it's amazing. I just need help. And they'll be like, well, they wouldn't even ask me. They just, but I should have said what I wanted, but you just leave it open. And then the investor starts saying, okay, well, if I'm going to be involved, this is what I want. And they just lay out all their demands and you have no demands for yourself. You're not even negotiating anymore. It's more a dictatorship. And then you feel obligated to say yes because you did ask for money and they did say they would give money. But the way that they're giving money is not beneficial to how you want to live your life. I'm not even talking about the business right now. When VCs get involved and they're putting this type of pressure on you to, again, maximize, they're the shareholders now, so maximize shareholder value, you have to make a lot of sacrifices in order to hit certain milestones that you might not be willing to give up. If you just want to run a solid, sustainable business and people are pressuring you to work 80-hour weeks or 80 plus hour weeks and not have a family and not have more kids, and it just becomes very heavy and you're not what you wanted. So if you're the entrepreneur, hold on to that power of ownership, hold on
100%.
to like developing the life you want to live using the business as a tool. I struggle with calling your business your baby. I would say your business is a machine that you can now teach that machine to help you live the life that you want. And hey, you can love it like a baby, but when you treat it like a baby, unconditional love is very difficult and it should only be given to humans. So,
You know what I think you should treat your baby like? The first stock you ever bought. You know, that one that you put your first $150 in and you're like, how's it doing? How's it doing?
Right.
How's it doing financially every day? You know, did I make a penny? Oh no, I lost a penny.
Right.
That kind of care.
I treat when I
Um,
bought RBC. That was the first stock I ever bought. So I love
that's
walking
fun.
by RBC Bank and be like, yeah, I own you guys.
Yeah, yeah. I actually just helping my son who's 9 buy his first stock.
Oh,
So
nice, nice.
yeah. Um, so May is asking, are platforms like AngelList, Angel Investors Ontario, etc., really effective? What's the best way to connect with angel investors? And sorry, can I just jump in? May, what do
Yes,
you
yes.
do? What's the business you're working on? Do you mind sharing? Okay, keep going then. If you can help us, that'd be great. Just give us some context.
Yeah, so I haven't seen, I mean, the effectiveness of AngelList. Angel, in, like NACO, NACO, I think it's the National Association of Capital something, but they have a big network of angel investors underneath. The thing with angel investor uh, groups is typically they have pitch events. So you have to build a relationship in order to get invited to the pitch event. And then, hey, good things happen from pitch events. But typically, I forget the exact statistic, but out of the whole year, they might fund 5 to 10 opportunities, even less. And so if you're pitching to a group that only invests in two and they see hundreds of people come through and pitch, the probability of you getting a favorable result with angels is difficult or low. So now what you really want to do is start to really build those relationships in high net worth organizations, really build relationships with organizations that curate all of them. So checking the members list of NACO, checking the angels list of like Angel Ontario. I know the spreadsheet that we created, it shows all these different groups. So if you're going down that route, that's where I was saying raising money becomes the new job. You are the CEO of fundraising. So you have to know all these groups. You have to know all the VC offices. You have to know all the private equity family offices so that you can be getting your pitch in front of them and getting that first meeting to be able to pitch and get money. And you have to become really good at pitching for money. So it's definitely possible. I mean, it's all public knowledge. The people that can get you the money are there. Is now how do you develop your skill in fundraising so that when you have that opportunity to pitch, you're more successful than not. And again, a lot of times it takes hearing a lot of no's, but getting the feedback. If you're not asking for the feedback when you get declined, even if it's you send in your pitch, you hear nothing, ask them, hey, I sent in my thing, you weren't interested, I'm curious why. If you get an initial meeting,
Get the feedback.
you weren't interested, tell me why. If you ask people that are investors to now critique and ask for guidance, that's going to get you a lot better feedback than just doing things cold. It might take you 100 cold pitches to figure out a good one. If you actually talk to an investor and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of sending, and they're like, well, your financials are not exciting to me. Like they can pick apart what you were about to send somebody that would have just thrown it in the garbage or just deleted your email. So definitely take advantage of. I'm not sure if Edge is doing any pitch competitions again, but those are the things that you should join so that one, you can see if you even qualify to be a finalist and then get the support along the way. And if you are a finalist, you're going to be in front of people that are potential investors or people that are potential mentors to again get their guidance. So take advantage of all these opportunities, these resources.
Yeah, I would say as much as anything, those pitch events are just a great way to hold your feet to the fire, right? So that you know how to articulate what you're about the best possible way, right? That
And I'll tell you
when the
a quick
so-called
story.
real opportunity, that means like, you know, name a big company is suddenly
That's the
knocking on your
thing.
door and wants your technology or your whatever, you're ready.
Right, because the first pitch competition that I was in, I came in second, but a person in the crowd saw my pitch and it became my mentor, and he's helped me fine tune like the structure of the company and how we pitch, and that allowed us to raise more money than the competition. I think it was for 20,000 and we got second, which was 5,000. But the value from that person in the room seeing my pitch has been hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably into the millions now, because I've known him for almost 10 years. And so that competition helped to open the doors to get me better at pitching. So that's where, yeah, take advantage of all these opportunities for sure.
So in your experience, are there certain business or organization types that are more attractive to particular types of funders?
Well, you had mentioned like there's definitely an affinity for tech startups. And when you have a company that you aren't utilizing technology in it, you're definitely gonna like not get through a lot of doors. Even if, let's say, you are an artisan, you are creating a certain, you're making jewelry, and so an investor isn't seeing how you can scale you manually doing the work and creating the things that you create. But if you showed them that you're able to teach people how to create the jewelry, you've created your own platform where all of these artisans that you've taught are able to sell their items on the platform, and it can be global. They can sell it across the world. That gets investment. That is called Etsy. So like Etsy is just a platform for artisans to sell their goods. They don't actually make the goods. So you have to see how to shift it from you manually doing everything to you being able to scale it. Otherwise, again, debt or loans and grants are your best bet, because investors are looking for you to scale to get their money back plus a return. Loans are just looking for you to get repay the loan, and of course, grants are good for I'll say amplifying what you're already doing. But you should definitely already have a model there that makes money.
May asked earlier about should you have your lawyer in your first meeting with a prospective funder?
I've never brought a lawyer to a pitch. You need a numbers person. So if there's going to be another person with you, if you are the visionary, bring your numbers person. So the numbers is who takes that chart and breaks it down in a way that the analyst in the room. So typically you're going to come up against like the A-type fund manager, and then their analysts. So the A-type might be interested, but they send everything to their analysts for them to do due diligence and tear it apart and save them from wasting their money. So you have to get the fund manager excited enough to, one, hear what you want or what you're doing, and engage in due diligence to, hey, write the check. Now the numbers guy is the one that speaks the language of the analyst, because everything that you put on your slide that talks about the money and the growth and the MRR and like all these ratios, if you're the visionary, that probably isn't your strength. So don't try to wing it. Have somebody there that can be on point. Like, listen, this is what we're doing now. This is how much impressions it takes to get a lead, and this is how many leads it takes to get an inquiry, and this is how many inquiry it takes to make a sale. Here's our conversion percentage. Here's our click-through rate. And here's our marketing budget that we did last year. And this is exactly how that operates. So if we get this money injected into our marketing strategy, this is how it's going to grow and have your return within 3 years. You could tell the story around that, but have the numbers person break it down so that the analyst is appeased and due diligence goes a lot smoother.
Okay, I have to ask you a personal question, Ryan. How old were you when you started your Detailing Nights venture?
27. Yes.
No, same age I was when I started my first company.
Nice.
Do you think if you'd heard people talking like all this, that you would have moved? Like, would you have Like sometimes I wonder if we don't overwhelm people before they're ready.
I don't know if you can be overwhelmed. I think because I always think back, like even, and you mentioned stocks. If somebody had come to our high school and said, today we are buying your first stock, I don't care if you don't know what that is. We are spending the day, like just like you did with your 9-year-old. We are spending today, and you will have a stock by the end of this day. And we will try to explain.
I've spent the last year training on my
but that's where I'm hoping high school students would be more receptive. It will shorten the time frame. But yeah, if somebody sat down with me and said, you know what, we're buying your first stock, I would be light years ahead in my understanding of why you should own stocks and the amount of stocks I would own. So if somebody came in high school, I remember I took an accounting class in high school, and if they came in and said, you know what, we are going to talk about entrepreneurship today. And even if it was just a session like this, where an entrepreneur was beamed in and he was talking about, hey, this is me. I went through these path and I started my business, and asked questions. I would have been more comfortable starting a business a lot earlier and not drifting from job to job and trying to figure out what I was doing. I would have been more comfortable to try and do something on my own, because my father had been planting those seeds. But you know, when your parents telling you something, it doesn't really click. So when in school, if you're being conditioned to be like, hey, entrepreneurship is a thing that is possible for you, and you're not only seeing the media that's talking about the Zuckerbergs and the Bill Gates and the Elon Musk, so you feel like, oh, I can never aspire to be an entrepreneur. That isn't the full spectrum of entrepreneurship. We have to be able to show all the different stages and levels so that a person understands being a plumber or a contractor running their own business, making over 100,000 is an excellent life, and it's possible for you. And again, that big,
that's what you want.
absolutely. So seeing the full spectrum, I definitely think would have made my jump into entrepreneurship earlier.
Yeah, I think that too for myself. But I also look back and think, sometimes things appear at the right time when you need it, right? So if you had overwhelmed yourself with everything, you may not have had the answer when you needed it because you tried to have everything in advance.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you did figure, okay, I'm going to try and start my own business, what gave you the confidence to say, okay, I'm ready to make this leap?
Well, back then I was all about revenue. So how fast could I get my first sale was my big concern. So once I got the first sale, then I had the confidence, or at least this much confidence. So
right, but that's
each subsequent sale made it that much more and more confident. But if you're building a tech platform, it's a little different scenario. So
right.
Yeah, I do think businesses today are a little different than they were 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, well, and that's where I still feel like a big spotlight is put on tech companies, and that is not the breadth of entrepreneurship. So we see, and that's like the shiny, hey, if you're a tech superstar, if you're a unicorn, that's like the aspiration to become Canada's next unicorn. But there's so many layers underneath tech companies, but that they should be thinking about tech, because we're talking about like this fourth industrial revolution where everything is going to be tech based. But still, that isn't the be all end all. There still are different types of entrepreneurship that is so key.
It's interesting to me when you look at the facts, data in Canada, that if you take government out, it's small businesses, many of whom are not tech-based, that employ the majority of Canadians.
There it
I find
is.
that fascinating. And many of those companies are, hiring 25 or 50 people, but just lots of little entrepreneurial companies all across the country. I find that encouraging.
Well, and especially how we segment business, to me, is flawed. It's like we have one employee to 50, and then actually, if you go one employee to 499, no, 1 to 50, I think is small business, and then 50 to 499 is medium sized, and then 500 plus is large enterprise. So that 1 to 50 to me is such a big gap between like, hey, there's people with no employees just operating. I think a person with 10 employees is completely different than a person with 50 employees.
100%.
Just get all lumped in to one.
Yeah.
And again, between 50 and 500, it's like that spectrum to me shouldn't all just be lumped in together.
100%. Yeah. So Mark is asking, what is defined as a social enterprise company? Does it have to be a nonprofit?
No. So a social enterprise, I would say, lives in between just a full capitalist for-profit company and then like a fully nonprofit only gets funding through grants and donations. So in the middle is an organization that has, I would say, the heart of a nonprofit that has positive impact in the community and could be environmentally positive impact or community positive impact, but also generates its own revenue through selling services or products. So when you have the combination is what I use to define social enterprise. And again, there's a bit of a spectrum there where it could be like a nonprofit that does a combination hybrid of like a little bit of sales, but more grants. And then there's like a for-profit that does a little bit of corporate, I wouldn't say corporate social responsibility. It's more a positive impact in the community. But again, they're not like fully nonprofit. They're like very focused on making their profit, but they're coming towards the center. And the center is the social enterprise.
So then while we're on that topic, why don't you talk about B Corp?
Right. So the B Corp or the B Corp certification was something that, again, was housed in Mars Discovery District. And around 2013 is when I became aware of it because they realized, oh, I think Detail Ignite would qualify as a B Corp. So what they do is they actually assess for-profit companies that are claiming to be social enterprises. So a for-profit company could be making certain environmental claims or certain community impact claims, and they take those companies through an assessment where out of 200 points, at the time, you had to have 80 points in order to qualify to be B Corp. So what was interesting is when I did the certification, we did get 84 points. So we got the B Corp certification, but it outlined all the different areas that we could improve our company. Initially, we weren't tracking like how much environmental impact we actually had, how much water are we actually saving, are we sourcing our products locally, or are they coming in from like internationally? Are you actually impacting jobs here in Canada, or are you actually supporting jobs outside of Canada? And then with the people that you hire, are you paying a living wage? That was the first time I ever heard of what a living wage was. And so initially we were under the living wage, and then we were able to shift and increase our pay rate to our employees to make sure it was over the living wage. So the second time we have to get reassessed every 2 years, and we went from 84 points to I think 132 points. But it was because they outlined all these different areas that we could do better. We were able to say, okay, we can adjust, we can become better in those areas, and it improved our score. So I really like it for that fact that it gives you a way to assess what type of impact you're actually having with your company and where you can improve.
It's a great success story, really.
Yeah, well, one pushback that I would do about B Corp is because social enterprise hasn't become a legal entity yet. And I've heard conversations about a social enterprise becoming a legal entity as far back as like 2015, and it hasn't happened yet. So now it's great to be assessed and you have a certification, but it doesn't give you a tangible benefit, like the difference between registering as a nonprofit and registering as just a strict corporation, a for-profit corporation, where a nonprofit doesn't pay income tax and a for-profit gets a corporate tax rate. So those are specific tangible benefits that you get by incorporating. So now when you say you're a social enterprise, you really just get lumped into a traditional corporation. So yeah, you get the corporate tax rate, but nothing else. So what incentive does a company have to become a social enterprise? Right now, there isn't one. And that's where if they created an actual legal designation and perhaps use the B Corp certification as a way to prove that they are actually a social enterprise, then maybe the corporate tax rate is lower. Maybe to incorporate costs less. Like there's certain things that benefits that they could build into an actual legal designation for social enterprise that unfortunately isn't there yet. So I was hoping B Corp and that whole movement was going to lead the charge and get some positive leeway there, but it hasn't happened yet. So we shall see. Right now, it's more, and again, it does have a great community because, oh man, there's like 110 in Canada and I think over 1,000 around the world. So that group of social enterprises, now you're in that community, that has a lot of value. Being able to go to the retreats and the summits that they used to have, again, has a lot of value. You're with like-minded people. You're seeing a big spectrum, again, of really successful B Corps and the super startups like myself. So you're like talking with people that own Ben and Jerry's and Bose Brewery, like multi-million-dollar, I don't know if Ben and Jerry's is billions, but you're in the room with them because you share that same mission. So I feel like the B Corp certification does that extremely well. It's now, how do we get an actual legal designation for social enterprise? Should be hopefully the next priority.
Junior says that most people are finding themselves in social enterprise because of grants.
I find a lot of people run businesses, and I would say especially in our community, the Black community, that are social enterprises and they don't realize it is. So they have this community work built into the operations of their company, and they should be going for those grants that apply to what they do. And that's why they typically lean towards grants, because they know that they're doing all this community work. So technically it should qualify for these grants that they keep seeing, but because they're registered as a for-profit, before they wouldn't qualify, but they know that they actually meet the criteria of the grant that they're seeing, but because they're a for-profit, they didn't qualify. And now if they become a nonprofit and they do qualify, a lot of times being that the process of running a nonprofit is a lot more tedious than just running a traditional business. So you've now signed up to have a board of directors and do an AGM and have meeting minutes and like the whole works with running a nonprofit, and you're relying on the grant to be able to keep your doors open, and you're relying on foundations to be able to keep your doors open. So yeah, the nonprofit world is a very, I want to say difficult, it's tedious. And especially if you don't have that concept of having things to sell and having a social enterprise component to it. It's not for entrepreneurs to just jump into starting a nonprofit because they want to get grants. To me, that is defeating the purpose. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yep, took me a sec there. Su Chen, did you have a question? No? Okay. So, Ryan, we're down to the final wire here. And sorry, does anyone else have any questions? Okay. We're down to the final wire. Last bit of advice you'd give if you were to encapsulate it.
Last bit of advice. I love hunting for capital. I like this year, so ACBN, we created a microloan program. So our target was to raise $250,000 for the fund in 2022. And we were actually able to raise that by the end of 2021. So now we're shifting our target to $1 million. And I really want to lean into understanding how to raise capital. What does it mean to pitch for 7 figures plus? So when you're running your business, I find you want to be able to set up the machine so it can run without you, and then get good at raising capital. That will, and again, not everybody gets the enjoyment from raising funds, but if that's something that you get good at, I feel you're more beneficial to your company than getting up every day and washing your car. And that's what I realized in my company. Me physically doing the work of cleaning 1 to 2 cars a day wasn't as impactful. Being able to go out and tell the story, pitch the concept, and raise money. And now we want to do that for the Black community on a whole, so that we can go out, raise money, and then be able to give it back to the community. So really, if you're raising capital for your company, lean into getting good at it. Try to put a team around you that can operate the business and go out and get the money you need to pay them. And like Lisa was saying, understand boosting your sales and having a proper marketing strategy, sales funnel, execution of the actual product and service. That comes first. Like if your business isn't able to sustain itself by making sales, you need to rethink, why are you raising money? Because you're really just raising money to put a Band-Aid on a broken machine. And we all know, since we watched The Matrix, machines don't need Band-Aids. They just need human batteries.
So, final question here. This comes from Omar. I'm not going to ask it because I thought it was a good one.
All
Do you
right.
recommend a whiteboard?
Whiteboard in the meeting? Like in the pitch?
Yeah, you've got a whiteboard on your wall.
Oh, I have whiteboards all around me. But is he asking?
Oh, I think.
Oh man, yeah. If you want to take notes, and I would recommend a whiteboard, yes, because I love whiteboards. And again, there was a type of paint in my old office. We painted the wall with a whiteboard type of paint, so you could just write on the walls. Yes, I love whiteboarding.
Awesome. So you're still old school, even while you're tech driven.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ryan. This has been an amazing conversation, really good information, and lots of kudos to you for sharing so openly and honestly from your heart. It's been a really good one. Thank you to all of you for being here. And as per the chat, we will be posting this up on the YouTube channel, so watch for it there.
Yeah, and I started a Instagram account called Grant Hunter U. So every other Wednesday, we talk about what grants are available. Some days we do working groups. So we find a grant that's open and go through it, every single question. If it's short enough, I answer the questions, like actually applying. So people get to look over my shoulder and see me applying for a grant and how I think through answers. So with the investment readiness program, we're definitely going to do that again. So as soon as it opens, we're going to be doing those info sessions and working groups. But I know this Wednesday, we have a session at 1, and then every 2 weeks, we do those grant sessions. So again, if you're looking for grants, I consider myself a grant hunter, and I love to find it because it really amplifies what you're already doing. It's such a bonus to be able to be running your business, and then you see a grant that matches what you're doing, or you can partner with a nonprofit that has the same mission as you, and the nonprofit can take the lead on getting grants, but it now is a bonus to what you're doing for your business. So think about that when you're going for grants as well. Don't feel like you have to go on your own. Collaboration is a big key to being successful with grants now.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll call that a wrap. Thank you so much.
Yeah. My pleasure. And always love being able to connect with you. I have to come back to the agency meetings. Are they still happening?
You do. We are still having them. Yeah.
Okay. I'll be there.